In the chaos of flashing red lights and rising water, a small figure darted through the crowd of panicking engineers. Jack, the maintenance man, nobody knew by name, swung a fire axe at the concrete wall, creating a pathway for the flood-threatening Apex Technologies' main servers. As the water receded, silence fell. Morgan Hayes, Silicon Valley's most powerful CEO, stood frozen at the door, her startled eyes meeting Jack's resolute gaze. The sun filtered through worn curtains as Jack Reynolds prepared breakfast in his modest apartment. At 39, his weathered hands moved with practiced efficiency, cracking eggs while simultaneously checking his daughter's backpack. "Emma, sweetie, did you finish your science project?" he called out, his voice carrying a tenderness reserved only for his 9-year-old daughter. 4 years had passed since cancer took his wife, Sarah, leaving him to navigate parenthood alone. The transition from senior software engineer at Google to maintenance technician at Apex Technologies had been a deliberate choice. The flexible hours allowed him to be there for Emma's school events, doctor appointments, and bedtime stories. The significant pay cut was a price he willingly paid. Jack placed pancakes shaped like dinosaurs on Emma's plate as she bounded into the kitchen, her auburn hair just like her mother's bouncing in pigtails. "Dad, I need to build a working model of a weather system by Friday," Emma announced, already digging into her breakfast. Jack's eyes crinkled with amusement. His daughter had inherited his passion for understanding how things worked. "We'll figure it out, Peanut. I've got some ideas involving a clear container and food coloring," he promised, mentally adjusting his evening plans. He gently wiped maple syrup from her chin, checking his watch. They needed to leave in 10 minutes to maintain their carefully orchestrated morning routine. Across town, in a sleek penthouse apartment overlooking the city, Morgan Hayes stood before floor-to-ceiling windows, coffee untouched as she reviewed quarterly projections on her tablet. At 36, she had built Apex Technologies into a tech giant, her reputation for ruthless efficiency and brilliant innovation opening doors traditionally closed to women in Silicon Valley. The upcoming launch of ApexMind, their groundbreaking AI platform, would either cement her legacy or become her most public failure. After a messy divorce 3 years ago, Morgan had poured herself even more completely into her work, her personal life becoming an afterthought. She rarely slept more than 5 hours, barely ate regular meals, and couldn't remember the last time she had taken a day off. Morgan's assistant's voice came through the intercom, reminding her of the executive meeting in 30 minutes. She straightened her tailored blazer, applied another coat of lipstick, and slipped on her Louboutins. The reflection staring back at her from the mirror looked polished and powerful, but the dark circles under her eyes told a different story. "Another day, another battle," she murmured to herself, collecting her designer briefcase before heading to the private elevator. No one at Apex Technologies would see beyond the mask of confidence she had perfected over years of fighting to be taken seriously in male-dominated boardrooms. At Apex headquarters, Jack moved through the building's corridors almost invisibly, wearing the gray uniform that caused most employees to look right through him. He methodically checked the ventilation systems, replaced burned-out light bulbs, and monitored the building's complex infrastructure, with a dedication few would expect from someone in his position. What his colleagues didn't know was that Jack kept mental notes of security vulnerabilities, software glitches, and potential system improvements. His engineering mind never stopped working, even if his official title no longer reflected his capabilities. The janitor's closet where he stored his supplies doubled as his unofficial office, complete with a small desk where he could review technical manuals during breaks and take video calls with Emma after school. The morning executive meeting was reaching its conclusion when the first signs of trouble appeared. Fluorescent lights flickered momentarily, causing a brief pause in the CFO's presentation. Morgan's eyes narrowed, her attention diverted to the subtle disruption. When the lights stabilized, the meeting continued, but she made a mental note to have maintenance check the electrical systems. As executives filed out of the conference room, Morgan remained seated, scanning the latest security report for ApexMind. A knock at the door interrupted her concentration. "Miss Hayes, the elevator on the west side is malfunctioning. Maintenance has been notified," her assistant informed her. Morgan nodded dismissively, already refocused on the report. Minor inconveniences were beneath her concern. Jack received the elevator maintenance request, gathering his tools before heading to the west wing. The problem was likely a simple sensor malfunction, something he could fix in under 30 minutes. As he approached the elevator, he noticed someone had already pressed the call button. Morgan Hayes stood impatiently checking her watch, clearly annoyed by the delay. Jack cleared his throat. "Excuse me, Miss Hayes. This elevator is out of service. I'm here to fix it." Morgan barely glanced at him, absorbed in an email on her phone. "How long will it take?" "I have a meeting on the 12th floor in 5 minutes." Her tone made it clear she expected an immediate solution. "The east elevators are working fine," Jack suggested politely. Morgan finally looked up, registering his presence for the first time. "Those elevators would take me to the opposite side of the building. I'd be late." Without waiting for a response, she pressed the call button again, as if her insistence might override the malfunction. Jack suppressed a sigh. "I can try to reset the system quickly, but I can't guarantee it will work right away." Morgan's expression made it clear that failure wasn't an option she entertained. Jack opened the control panel beside the elevator, his fingers moving with practiced precision as he bypassed the error code. The doors slid open. "After you," he said, gesturing for her to enter. Morgan stepped inside, Jack following with his toolbox to complete the repair. Just as the doors closed, the lights flickered again, more severely this time. The elevator jerked to a halt between floors, emergency lights activating. Morgan's composure momentarily faltered. What just happened? Jack was already accessing the internal control panel. Power fluctuation. The elevator's safety system engaged. He examined the circuit board, quickly identifying the issue. Buildings probably experiencing minor power surges. "I can override the safety protocol, but it would be safer to wait for the system to reset itself." Morgan checked her watch again. "I don't have time to wait. Can you fix it or not?" Jack hesitated, weighing the risks. "I can, but I'd need to reroute the auxiliary power." Without waiting for permission, he began reconfiguring connections with the confidence of someone who understood the system far better than a typical maintenance worker should. Morgan observed his movements with growing curiosity. "You seem to know what you're doing," she remarked, her tone slightly less dismissive. Jack didn't look up from his work. "I've fixed a few elevators in my time." His fingers completed a complex sequence, and the elevator hummed back to life, resuming its journey upward. "Should be fine now, but I'd recommend having the electrical team check the building's power distribution system. These fluctuations aren't normal." The elevator doors opened on the 12th floor. Morgan stepped out, pausing briefly. "Thank you for the quick fix," she said, the words sounding unpracticed, as though expressing gratitude wasn't part of her regular vocabulary. As she walked away, she found herself wondering about the maintenance man who spoke about electrical systems with unexpected authority. Jack watched her disappear down the hallway before returning to the control panel to complete the proper repairs, ensuring the elevator wouldn't malfunction again. Another invisible contribution to keeping Apex Technologies running smoothly, unnoticed by those who benefited from his expertise. Days passed, with Jack continuing his routine of maintenance work and after-hours video calls with Emma about her science project. During his lunch break in the cafeteria, Jack sat alone in the corner, quietly eating his sandwich while helping Emma troubleshoot her weather system model via video chat. "Dad, the food coloring isn't making the right pattern," Emma complained, her face scrunched in frustration as she held up her plastic container. Jack leaned closer to his phone screen. "Try adding the cold water more slowly, Peanut. It's about density differences." He didn't notice Morgan entering the cafeteria, pausing briefly as she recognized him engaged in what appeared to be a scientific explanation to a child. Morgan collected her salad from the counter, intending to take it back to her office as usual. Something about the maintenance man's patient explanation of thermal dynamics to a young girl captured her attention. Instead of leaving, she found herself taking a seat at a nearby table, close enough to overhear his conversation. "Remember how we talked about convection currents? That's what you're trying to show with the colored water," Jack explained, his voice carrying the same passionate clarity Morgan had heard from prestigious scientists at tech conferences. The disconnect between his job and his evident knowledge piqued her curiosity further. As Jack ended the call with a promise to pick up more food coloring on his way home, he became aware of Morgan's presence nearby. Their eyes met briefly before she looked away, pretending to be absorbed in checking emails on her phone. Jack packed up his lunch, nodding politely as he passed her table on his way out. Morgan found herself wondering about the story behind a man who explained complex scientific principles to a child while wearing a maintenance uniform. The question lingered in her mind as she returned to her office, temporarily distracting her from the mounting pressure of the ApexMind launch. The following week brought the first serious crisis. During a routine security audit, the ApexMind platform showed critical vulnerabilities that threatened the entire project. Morgan called an emergency meeting with her top engineers and security team. The conference room buzzed with tension as technical directors argued over potential solutions, none of which addressed the core issue without requiring weeks of recoding. "We don't have weeks. The launch is in 7 days, Morgan reminded them, her voice cutting through the debate. "Find a solution by tomorrow morning, or we'll need to postpone the launch." The implications hung heavily in the air. Postponement would send stocks plummeting and give competitors a critical advantage. Jack was changing air filters in the ventilation system above the conference room when the emergency meeting took place. Through the grates, he could hear the technical discussion clearly, immediately recognizing the security flaw they were describing. It was a variant of a zero-day vulnerability he had patched during his time at Google, a complex issue with a surprisingly simple solution if approached from the right angle. As the meeting dispersed, Jack completed his maintenance work, debating whether to get involved. Previous experiences had taught him that unsolicited advice from maintenance staff was rarely welcomed, regardless of its merit. Despite his reservations, Jack couldn't ignore a fixable problem. He jotted down the solution on maintenance request paper, the only paper he had access to, and approached Rebecca, Morgan's assistant. "Excuse me, I couldn't help overhearing about the security issue. I think this might help," he said, offering the folded paper. Rebecca gave him a patronizing smile. "Thanks, but I'm sure the technical team has it under control." She accepted the paper nonetheless, placing it on her desk without opening it, clearly intending to discard it later. Jack nodded, understanding his place in the hierarchy. "Just thought it might save some time," he said quietly before returning to his duties. That evening, the crisis escalated. The security team's attempted fixes had only exposed additional vulnerabilities. Morgan remained in her office past midnight, reviewing increasingly desperate proposals from her engineering department. None offered a viable solution that could be implemented before the launch. With investors already scheduled to attend the unveiling and media coverage arranged, postponement would be a public relations disaster. Morgan rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of potential failure pressing down on her. A light knock interrupted her thoughts. Rebecca entered with a fresh cup of coffee. "You should go home, get some rest," Morgan told her assistant. "I'll leave when we have a solution." Rebecca hesitated, then placed a folded piece of paper on Morgan's desk. "The maintenance guy gave me this earlier. Said it might help with the security issue." Morgan raised an eyebrow, her expression skeptical. "The maintenance guy?" She unfolded the paper, initially ready to dismiss whatever amateur suggestion it contained. Her eyes widened as she read the neatly written notes outlining a sophisticated approach to patching the vulnerability, one that none of her high-priced engineers had proposed. The solution was elegant in its simplicity, demonstrating a deep understanding of the system's architecture. "Who exactly gave you this?" Morgan asked, suddenly alert despite her exhaustion. "The quiet one, been here a few years." "Jack something." "Reynolds, I think," Rebecca replied, surprised by her boss's sudden interest. Morgan was already reaching for her phone, calling the head of human resources. "I need everything we have on Jack Reynolds. Now." While waiting, she reread the proposed solution, recognizing that if it worked, it could save the launch. 20 minutes later, she was staring at Jack's personnel file, discovering that the unassuming maintenance worker had previously been a senior software engineer at Google with an impressive list of patents and security credentials. The file noted his resignation 4 years ago, shortly after his wife's death, with a request for a position with flexible hours to care for his young daughter. Morgan directed security to locate Jack immediately. They found him working the night shift, quietly replacing ceiling tiles in an empty office area. "Miss Hayes wants to see you in her office." "Now," the security guard announced, causing Jack to look up in surprise. He set aside his tools, quickly washing his hands in a nearby restroom before following the guard to the executive floor. As he entered Morgan's office, he noticed his maintenance request form on her desk, now covered in her handwritten notes. "You wrote this?" she asked without preamble, her tone unreadable. Jack nodded, his posture straightening slightly as he shifted from maintenance worker to engineer for the first time in years. "It's a nested authentication bypass. I've seen similar vulnerabilities before." Morgan studied him with new interest. "According to your file, you were quite accomplished at Google. Why are you changing ceiling tiles at Apex?" The question was direct, almost accusatory. Jack met her gaze steadily. "My daughter needed me present more than I needed a prestigious title." The simplicity of his answer caught Morgan off guard. Before she could respond, Jack's phone rang. He glanced at the screen apologetically. "It's my daughter. May I take this?" Morgan nodded, watching as Jack's entire demeanor softened when he answered. "Hey, Peanut. Nightmare again?" "I know, I miss her too." His voice gentle, Jack reassured his daughter about the monster under her bed, promised to leave the hallway light on when he got home, and reminded her where to find her favorite stuffed animal. "I'll be home soon, try to sleep. Love you lots." As he ended the call, Jack turned back to Morgan with a slightly embarrassed smile. "Sorry about that. She has trouble sleeping when I work nights." Morgan found herself unexpectedly moved by the exchange, remembering her own childhood nightmares in the group home where she grew up, nightmares no one had ever soothed away. The moment passed quickly as Morgan refocused on the crisis at hand. About your solution, can you implement it tonight? Jack considered the question, mentally calculating the work involved. It would take about 6 hours of focused coding. The approach is sound, but execution requires access to the core systems. Morgan checked her watch. It was nearly 1 in the morning. I'll give you everything you need. Can you start now? Jack thought about Emma, safely asleep at their neighbor Mrs. Wilson's apartment where she stayed during his night shifts. Yes, I can work through the night. I'll need to make a quick call to check on my daughter, but then I can start immediately. Morgan personally escorted Jack to the Secure Development Lab, overriding security protocols to grant him access to ApexMind source code. The night shift security team watched in confusion as the CEO and a maintenance worker entered the most restricted area of the building. Mr. Reynolds will be working here tonight. He has my full authorization, Morgan informed them, her tone leaving no room for questions. As Jack settled at a workstation, Morgan hesitated. Would you like coffee? Something to eat? The offer surprised them both. Jack smiled. Coffee would be great. Black, please. Morgan found herself in the unfamiliar position of fetching coffee for someone else, a task she hadn't performed since her first internship 15 years ago. When she returned with 2 cups of coffee, Jack was already deeply focused, his fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. Morgan pulled up a chair, watching his work with growing respect. For hours, they remained in the lab, Jack coding while occasionally explaining his approach. Morgan asked intelligent questions, quickly grasping the technical concepts. At around 3 in the morning, they ordered late-night pizza, eating directly from the box as they continued working. The formal barriers between CEO and maintenance worker gradually dissolved, replaced by the camaraderie of 2 professionals tackling a complex problem together. During a short break, Morgan found herself sharing details about the pressure surrounding the ApexMind launch. This platform isn't just another product. It's the future of the company, she admitted, revealing a vulnerability she rarely showed. If it fails, the board has made it clear they'll reconsider my position. Jack nodded, understanding the stakes. Technology launches are always risky, but from what I've seen, ApexMind is revolutionary. The core architecture is brilliant. His genuine admiration for her company's work brought an unexpected warmth to Morgan's expression. Thank you. That means something, especially coming from someone with your background. The conversation shifted as Jack asked about the practical applications planned for ApexMind. Morgan described her vision with increasing animation, revealing the passionate innovator beneath the corporate exterior. AI shouldn't just make companies more money, it should solve real problems, make life better for people who need it most. Jack listened, impressed by the ethical considerations built into her business model. That's not the typical Silicon Valley approach, he observed. Morgan's smile held a hint of defiance. I've never been interested in being typical. As dawn approached, Jack implemented the final components of his solution, running comprehensive tests to ensure the security vulnerability was fully addressed. It works, he announced at 6:30 in the morning, the relief evident in his voice. The patch is stable and doesn't compromise any of the platform's functionality. Morgan leaned over his shoulder, reviewing the test results with tired but triumphant eyes. You just saved ApexMind, she said quietly. And possibly my company. Jack closed the development environment, suddenly aware of their proximity. Just doing my job, he replied, though they both knew that wasn't true. Morgan straightened, professional boundaries reasserting themselves. Your personnel file doesn't do you justice, Mr. Reynolds. I'd like to discuss your position at Apex when this launch is behind us. Jack gathered his things, fatigue finally catching up with him. I appreciate that, Miss Hayes. But my current arrangement works well for my daughter. He checked his phone. Speaking of whom, I need to get home to take her to school. Morgan nodded, making a mental note to revisit the conversation later. Of course. And Jack? Thank you. As he left the lab, Jack felt Morgan's eyes following him, sensing that something fundamental had shifted between them. The following days passed in a blur of final preparations for the ApexMind launch. Jack returned to his maintenance duties, though he noticed a subtle change in how Morgan acknowledged him, when they passed in the hallways, a nod, sometimes even a brief smile. The security patch he'd implemented held strong through all final testing, allowing the launch preparations to proceed on schedule. Jack received no public recognition for his contribution, which suited him fine. His priority remained being available for Emma, helping with her nearly completed weather system project, and maintaining their comfortable routine. The morning of the launch arrived with clear skies and nervous energy throughout Apex headquarters. Jack started his shift early, ensuring all systems in the presentation hall functioned perfectly. As VIPs and media representatives began arriving, he retreated to the background, content to watch the proceedings from the shadows. Morgan appeared on stage to enthusiastic applause, looking every inch the successful tech CEO in a tailored black suit, her confidence evident as she began her presentation. Jack felt an unexpected surge of pride as he watched her introduce ApexMind to the world, knowing his small contribution had helped make this moment possible. Midway through the presentation, Morgan deviated from her prepared remarks. "Innovation doesn't always come from expected sources," she said, her eyes scanning the audience. "Sometimes, the most valuable insights come from people we've overlooked." The statement caused Jack to pause his work, listening more attentively. "At Apex, we're committed to recognizing talent wherever it exists, which is why I'd like to introduce someone special." Jack froze as Morgan continued. "Would Jack Reynolds please join me on stage?" A spotlight searched the hall, finally finding Jack in his gray maintenance uniform near the back wall. Confused murmurs spread through the audience as security ushered him toward the stage. Jack approached hesitantly, acutely aware of his work clothes and the curious stares of hundreds of industry elites. As he reached Morgan, she extended her hand with a reassuring smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, a week ago, Apex Technologies faced a crisis that threatened this entire launch," she announced. "When our top engineers couldn't find a solution, this man who has quietly maintained our facilities for years provided the answer that saved ApexMind." The audience's confusion was palpable as Morgan continued. "What most people at Apex didn't know is that Jack Reynolds was once a senior software engineer at Google, with multiple patents and security innovations to his credit." She turned to face him directly. 4 years ago, Mr. Reynolds stepped away from his tech career to raise his daughter after losing his wife. He took a position in our maintenance department because it offered the flexibility a single father needed. Jack stood uncomfortably in the spotlight, unprepared for this public recognition. The security protocol protecting ApexMind today exists because of his brilliance and dedication. As the audience began to applaud, Morgan gestured toward the side of the stage, where Rebecca appeared, leading Emma by the hand. Jack's eyes widened in surprise as his daughter ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist. "Dad, Miss Hayes invited me to see you be a hero," Emma exclaimed, beaming with pride. Jack looked questioningly at Morgan, who offered a small shrug. "I thought she should see this," Morgan explained quietly, before turning back to the microphone. "At Apex, we're launching more than a new technology today. We're also launching a new corporate philosophy, one that recognizes that brilliance doesn't always wear a suit or carry an impressive title." The presentation concluded with thunderous applause, not just for ApexMind but for the unexpected human story that had unfolded on stage. As reporters crowded forward with questions, Morgan smoothly directed Jack and Emma away from the chaos, leading them to a quiet room backstage. "I hope you don't mind that I surprised you," she said to Jack once they were alone. The world needed to know who really saved ApexMind. Jack watched Emma excitedly exploring the VIP area, his emotions conflicted. "It wasn't necessary, but thank you for including my daughter. Seeing her proud like this means everything." Morgan hesitated, then revealed her true intention. "I'd like to offer you a position as Director of Security Innovation, with flexible hours and the freedom to set your own schedule around Emma's needs." The offer was generous, far exceeding Jack's expectations. "Why would you do this?" he asked. Genuinely perplexed. Morgan's expression softened. "Because talent shouldn't be mopping floors, and because a child deserves to see their parent recognized for who they truly are." She glanced at Emma, now chatting animatedly with Rebecca. "And perhaps because working through the night with you reminded me why I started this company in the first place, to create technology that serves humanity, not the other way around." In the weeks that followed, Jack transitioned to his new role, maintaining his promise to be present for Emma, while contributing his expertise to Apex's security infrastructure. His former maintenance colleagues celebrated his promotion, though many expressed they would miss his willingness to help with even the smallest problems. The tech industry buzzed with the story of the maintenance worker turned security director, with Morgan receiving praise for her unconventional approach to talent recognition. Apex's stock soared, with investors responding positively to both the successful ApexMind launch and the company's apparent commitment to valuing substance over status. One Saturday morning, Jack and Emma were enjoying their traditional weekend pancake breakfast when the doorbell rang. Emma raced to answer it, returning with wide eyes. "Dad, it's Miss Hayes," she whispered excitedly. Jack quickly wiped syrup from his hands, surprised by the unexpected visit. Morgan stood awkwardly in the doorway, holding a bakery box. I was in the neighborhood, she explained, though they both knew her penthouse was across town. I brought muffins. It was clearly her first attempt at a casual social call in years. Emma immediately invited her in, proudly showing off her completed weather system model, which had earned an A+ at school. Jack watched as Morgan attentively listened to Emma's detailed explanation of convection currents, genuinely engaged in the child's enthusiasm. When Emma asked for help with her next science project building a simple robot, Morgan's eyes lit up with unexpected excitement. I built my first robot when I was about your age, she revealed, describing how she had constructed it from discarded electronics at the group home where she grew up. As Morgan helped Emma sketch initial design ideas, Jack prepared fresh coffee, observing the natural connection forming between them with quiet amazement. Later, as Emma became absorbed in drawing detailed robot plans, Jack and Morgan found themselves talking by the kitchen window. Your daughter is extraordinary, Morgan said, watching Emma with genuine admiration. She reminds me of myself at that age, except she has something I never did. When Jack raised a questioning eyebrow, Morgan continued softly, a parent who puts her first. The simple statement revealed more about Morgan's childhood than any formal biography ever had. Jack found himself wanting to know more about the journey that had transformed an orphan girl into one of tech's most powerful leaders. As Morgan prepared to leave, Emma insisted on walking her to her car. Jack watched from the doorway as his daughter spontaneously hugged Morgan goodbye, catching the brief look of surprise and warmth that crossed the CEO's usually composed face. When Emma ran back inside, to continue her robot designs, Morgan lingered a moment longer. Thank you for this morning, she said, her usual corporate polish momentarily set aside. It's been a very long time since I spent a Saturday doing something other than working. Jack smiled, recognizing the admission for the rare personal disclosure it was. Emma and I have pancake breakfast every Saturday, he replied. You're welcome to join any time. Morgan's reply came in the form of a small, private smile, and a nod before she drove away. Jack closed the door, returning to the kitchen where Emma was already incorporating elements of Morgan's robot suggestions into her design. I like Miss Hayes, Dad, Emma announced without looking up from her drawing. She doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby. Jack began clearing the breakfast dishes, hiding his own smile. She's pretty special, he agreed, realizing the truth in his words only as he spoke them. On the refrigerator, Emma had already pinned up her latest family drawing, now featuring 3 figures instead of 2. At Apex Technologies, employees noticed subtle changes in their CEO's management style. Morgan began holding regular open forums where staff from all departments could present ideas directly. The rigid hierarchy that had defined the company culture gradually softened, with contributions valued regardless of title or position. Jack's security team became known for its innovative approaches and collaborative atmosphere, attracting top talent who appreciated the balance between professional excellence and personal well-being. The story of how ApexMind was saved became company legend, a reminder that solutions could come from unexpected places. Morgan continued to join Jack and Emma for occasional weekend breakfasts, each visit becoming less formal than the last. Sometimes they discussed work security protocols or AI ethics, but more often, they simply enjoyed building robots with Emma, exploring the city's museums, or planning the tree house that Jack was constructing in the community garden near their apartment. Neither Jack nor Morgan rushed to define what was developing between them, content to let their connection grow organically, prioritizing Emma's comfort above all else. On the anniversary of the ApexMind launch, Morgan hosted a small celebration at her penthouse, the first time she had opened her private space to anyone from the company. Only Jack, Emma, and a few key team members were invited. As the others engaged in animated conversation about Apex's next innovation, Morgan found Jack alone on the balcony, gazing at the city lights. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked, joining him at the railing. Jack smiled, the past year's positive changes evident in his relaxed posture and confident demeanor. "I was just thinking about how differently things might have turned out if that elevator hadn't malfunctioned last year." Morgan laughed softly. "Or if the building's power hadn't fluctuated during the storm." She hesitated, then added more seriously, "Or if you hadn't been brave enough to pass me that note about the security vulnerability." Jack turned to face her, struck by how much more approachable she seemed now, how the perpetual tension she once carried had eased. "Sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest moments," he observed. Morgan nodded, glancing through the glass doors to where Emma was excitedly showing the robotics team her latest creation. "And the most important people aren't always the ones with impressive titles." The sound of Emma calling them inside broke the moment. As they turned to rejoin the gathering, Morgan impulsively reached for Jack's hand, her fingers intertwining with his. No declarations were necessary. The gesture spoke volumes about the journey they had taken from CEO and maintenance worker to something neither had expected to find. Jack squeezed her hand gently, recognizing that some storms bring destruction while others clear the path to something new, something better. Together, they returned to the warmth of the celebration, two people who had found each other across the unlikely divide, between the penthouse and the maintenance room, between solitary power and the quiet strength of family. In the coming days, Emma would add another drawing to their refrigerator, a more detailed family portrait, showing three figures standing beside a treehouse. The woman's hand now clearly holding the man's. All three faces bearing identical smiles. The maintenance request form that had started everything found a new home, framed on the wall of Morgan's office. A daily reminder that sometimes the most valuable solutions come from the people we've been trained not to see, and that true connection happens when we finally learn to look.